Today's lesson will cover Chapter 3, Key Issue 4, Why Do Migrants Face Challenges? First, we're going to look at general government immigration policies. Then we're going to look at U.S. quota laws. Then U.S.-Mexico border issues. And lastly, Europe's immigration crisis. Today, the major obstacles faced by most immigrants are political. A migrant needs a passport to legally emigrate from a country and a visa to legally immigrate to a new country. Most countries have implemented policies that admit some types of immigrants, but not others. In the United States, there are two reasons that most visas are granted, and that includes specific employment placement and family reunification. Figure 3-36, located on page 100 of your textbook, looks at immigration policy in the world. These policies vary, but few countries have targeted increasing immigration. The United Nations classifies countries according to 4 types of immigration policies. 1, maintaining the current level of immigration. 2, increasing the level. 3, reducing the level. And 4, with no policy. According to the UN, 21 countries seek more immigrants, 32 want fewer immigrants, 116 wish to maintain the current level, and 25 do not have a policy. Let's talk a little bit about the concept of unauthorized immigration. The number of people allowed to immigrate into the United States is at an historically high level, but the number who wish to come is even higher. There are many obstacles to entering the U.S. legally. It is very difficult to obtain a visa and very expensive to begin the paperwork in the legal process. It also takes a very long time in which many immigrants do not have the luxury of taking. Immigrants that do not have proper documents are referred to as unauthorized immigrants. Using the term unauthorized immigrant is the term preferred by academic observers. Using the term undocumented immigrant is the term that's preferred by some groups that advocate for more rights for those individuals. You may hear the term illegal alien, and this is a highly offensive term that is preferred by some groups that favor tougher restrictions and enforcement of immigration laws. Typically, if you hear the term illegal alien, you know exactly the sway of the media source that is using it. Academic observers do not use this term because it is seen to strip individuals of their identity. Even the less offensive term, illegal immigrant, is still avoided by use of academic observers. Let's take a look at figure 3-37 on page 101 of your textbook. This graph shows unauthorized immigrants in the United States. Most you'll see are from Mexico. The Pew Hispanic Center estimated that there were 11.3 million unauthorized immigrants living in the United States in 2014. The number increased rapidly during the first years of the 21st century, after hitting a peak of 12.2 million in 2007. The number declined because a reduced job opportunity in the United States during the severe recession started in 2008. Now let's take a look at figure 3-38 located on page 101 of your textbook. This map shows the distribution of unauthorized immigrants. The largest numbers you will see are in California and Texas. More than 1/2 of unauthorized immigrants emigrate from Mexico. The remainder are about evenly divided between other Latin American countries and other regions of the world. The 11.3 million unauthorized immigrants included 1 million children. In addition, while living in the U.S., unauthorized immigrants have given birth to approximately 4.5 million babies who are legal citizens of the U.S. Approximately 8 million unauthorized immigrants are employed in the United States, accounting for around 5% of the total U.S. civilian labor force. Unauthorized immigrants are much more likely than average Americans to be employed in construction and hospitality, basically food service and lodging, and less likely to be in white-collar jobs like education, healthcare, and finance. The next section is going to discuss U.S. quota laws. These laws established quotas or maximum limits on the number of people who could immigrate to the United States during a one-year period. Let's first look at 1924. For each country that had native-born persons already living in the United States, 2% of their number, based on the 1910 census, could immigrate each year. This ensured that most immigrants would come from Europe. In 1965, quotas for individual countries were replaced with hemisphere quotas, 170,000 from the Eastern Hemisphere and 120,000 from the Western Hemisphere. In 1978, a global quota of 290,000 was set, including a maximum of 20,000 per country. In 1990, the global quota was raised to 700,000. Today, because the number of applicants for admission to the United States far exceeds the quotas, Congress has set preferences. These preferences include family reunification. Approximately 3/4 of immigrants are admitted to reunify families, primarily spouses or unmarried children of people already living in the United States. The typical wait for a spouse to gain entry is currently about 5 years. The next preference is for skilled workers. Exceptionally talented professionals receive most of the remainder of the quota. And lastly, preference is for diversity. Few immigrants are admitted by lottery under a diversity category for people from countries that historically sent few people to the United States. It is incredibly important to note that the quota does not apply to refugees who are admitted if they are judged as genuine refugees. Also admitted without limit are spouses, children, and parents of U.S. citizens. Other countries are upset with countries such as the United States for giving preference to skilled workers. This is because developed countries have the advantage where they can attract these skilled workers. And this leads to a brain drain, which is a large-scale immigration of talented people from the developing country to the developed country. What ends up happening is scientists, researchers, doctors, and other professionals migrate to countries where they can make more money. Many well-educated immigrants from Asia enter the United States under the preference for skilled workers. Once admitted, they can bring relatives under the family reunification provisions of the quota. This leads to chain migration, which is the migration of people to a specific location because relatives or members of the same nationality previously migrated there. The next topic we're going to cover is the U.S. and Mexico and their border issues. Take a look at figure 3-41 located on page 105 of your textbook. This map shows the U.S.-Mexico border. The border is 1,951 miles long. Some border crossings are congested, like the one in Tijuana. Others can be crossed easily by foot. Policy concerning unauthorized migration from Mexico is a highly debated topic. Debate includes the level of border enforcement, the role of unauthorized workers in the economy, and protecting the civil rights of U.S. citizens. There are many that argue that immigrants should have a path to citizenship. Let's explore two polarizing sides on the issue. On one side, people believe that the U.S. should have tightened security and not offer a path to legal status. Some of their arguments are that it sends the wrong message. It encourages other people to migrate as well. And it also contributes to poor security, where the border is not sufficiently secure, especially in small towns and rural areas. On the other hand, people who believe that there should be a path to legal status believe that it is impractical to believe that law enforcement could actually find 11 million unauthorized immigrants. They also believe that pulling unauthorized immigrants out of their jobs would cripple the U.S. economy. They argue that agents at the border have doubled since 2000, and they also argue that unauthorized immigrants are productive and otherwise law-abiding members of U.S. society. In the last part of Key Issue 4, we're going to talk about Europe's immigration crisis. Of the world's 16 countries with the highest per capita income, 14 are in Northern and Western Europe. As a result, the region attracts immigrants from poorer regions located to the south and east. In cities like Berlin, Brussels, Paris, and Zurich, immigrants provide essential services such as driving buses, collecting garbage, repairing streets, and washing dishes. Europe is home to many migrants who've traveled from North Africa and Eastern Europe. Germany and other wealthy European countries operated guest worker programs in which immigrants from poorer countries were allowed to immigrate temporarily to obtain jobs. The guest worker programs operated mainly during the 1960s and 1970s and were expected to be examples of circular migration, which is the temporary movement of a migrant worker between home and host countries to seek employment. Guest workers were expected to return to their countries of origin once their work was done. Instead, many of these circular migrants who came for these programs ended up staying permanently in Europe. They, along with their children and grandchildren, have become citizens of the host country, and the term guest worker is no longer used in Europe, and the government programs no longer exist. Eventually, we will discuss the new influxes of refugees from Southwest Asia, as well as increased hostility to immigrants in many European countries. Let's take a look at figure 3-34, located on page 106 of your textbook. This is going to indicate net migration in Europe. What we see here is that Eastern Europe is a source region of migrants moving to Western and Northern Europe. Basically, the former communist countries of Eastern Europe have net out migration, but most portions of Western Europe have net in migration. This last map, figure 3-35, is located on page 107 of your textbook, and it indicates refugee flows in Europe. The largest flows of immigrants are from Turkey to Germany and from Romania to Italy. Immigrants comprise around 8% of Europe's population, including 4% who migrated from one European country to another, and 4% who emigrated to Europe from elsewhere in the world. Despite the modest percentage of immigrants, hostility to immigrants has become a central plank in the platform of political parties in many European countries. Most European countries are now in stage 4 of the demographic transition, and population growth in Europe is fueled by immigration from other regions, a trend that a lot of Europeans do not like. Many point to the irony in this hostility because Europe was the source of most of the world's immigrants, especially during the 19th century. During the 19th century, many Europeans migrated to the United States, Canada, Australia, and other regions of the world. Because of the emigration of 65 million Europeans, this has profoundly changed world culture. Europeans brought their cultural heritage to their new homes, and because of migration, Indo-European languages are now spoken by half of the world's people. It is also worth mentioning that Europe's most prevalent religion, Christianity, has the world's largest number of adherents. European art, music, literature, philosophy, and ethics have also diffused throughout the world. Europeans are seen to have imposed their cultures on the world. Many of today's conflicts in former European colonies resulted from past practices by European immigrants, like the drawing of arbitrary boundary lines and discriminating among local ethnic groups. We have reached the end of Key Issue 4 from Chapter 3. Please prepare to discuss the topics in this lesson in class.